legitimate way to have a class. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to give an online speech. Like, I have public speaking, I have an acting class. Like, how am I supposed to do that over the phone? It's gonna be really different. In a few days, I'll have to go back to campus to get the rest of my stuff and unpack my life back at home. I mean, the most important thing is that everyone's like healthy and okay at home. So as long as that's happening for me and my friends, then I'm fine. But I hope to see them next year at least.
Working from home. It sounds fun, even luxurious. You don't have to wake up early to get ready and do your hair and makeup. You don't have to commute. But let me tell you, it can get old fast. The isolation sets in, the couch starts beckoning, and by the end of the day, you can feel like an unproductive garbage human who longs for the days of awkward office small talk. I'm Rebecca Greenfield, the head of workplace diversity coverage at Bloomberg News. Now that more offices are sending more workers home for the foreseeable future, what are some ways that you can make working from home work for you? Step 1, shower and get ready for the day. It is tempting to sleep in as late as possible and roll straight out of bed and into your inbox. But I'm going to highly recommend against doing that. You really will feel gross by lunchtime. Get up, shower, and put on some real clothing. And then give yourself a little buffer time before getting to work.
If there is a problem with the European Union today, it is because the foundation, the economic foundation of capital, of imperialism, is being stressed by the struggles of the oppressed peoples of the world to take back their resources from this parasite that bleeds Africa.
Contribute, say something.
You want me to say something? Fine. I'll say something. You people. You're not a race. You are a virus. You destroy the world. Everything beautiful you poison. You drag us from our homes. You rape our daughters, murder our sons. You crack our spines and do all you can to break our will. You stab us. Then you put the knife in our hand and tell us it's our fault. And if you don't do it yourself, you stand by, close your eyes, and pretend there's nothing wrong. And then you pray to your God.
As you can see, straight from the male slave dungeon, where they kept 1,000 of us there, had us walk on the beach, shackled up as we boarded the ships and went to the Americas, Caribbeans. Here the British had a church just above the 1,000 black men that were enslaved. A church right over their head where they prayed and worshiped their God. While we was here, 1,000 in number, packed in 5 different chambers.
To silence our screams so that you can enjoy the happiness that we built for you with our blood. But it's not your fault. It's the only way you know how to be. And the only thing that will change anything is if another virus comes along and does to you what you do to us. And I hope that happens very soon.
That bleeds Africa, that bleeds the world, that bleeds Afghanistan, that bleeds the people of Yemen who are dying by the thousands even as we have this discussion. This is the basis of a Brexit. It can't stand together anymore because the host is rejecting the parasite. And it's creating crisis throughout Europe and throughout the imperialist world. I think it's necessary, brothers and sisters, to say that there has been a natural trajectory by African people for closer union.
Well, this evening obviously hasn't gone as I'd hoped. And I think I'm having a full-on panic attack right now, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom and get myself together, and when I come back, I hope you don't see me as the devil.
There are more Africans in prison in the United States than there are people in Djibouti or in Equatorial Guinea. And so we find it very difficult also recognizing that by their own estimates, it would take 228 years for the income of Africans colonized in the United States to equal that of the colonial white population. So it is absolutely necessary for me to stand here today before you expressing total opposition to the United States government terroristic actions against the people of Venezuela with an attempt to starve the people into opposition to their government. The colonial borders that were created by Europe in 1884 and 85 We have to be able to break out of this, but it's going to take revolution in order to do this. That will destroy imperialism and the world economy that's responsible for the growing immiseration of the masses of people around the world. Uhuru. If there is a problem with the European Union today, it is because the foundation, the economic foundation of capital, of imperialism, is being stressed by the struggles of the oppressed peoples of the world to take back their resources from this parasite that bleeds Africa.
Mr. Caputo Pearl from United Teachers Los Angeles and Max Arias from SEI 99. After that, we'll be prepared to take any questions you might have. I'll start with my statement. The public health crisis created by the coronavirus is not something any of us could have reasonably expected to happen, and we are in uncharted waters as we work to prevent the spread of the illness. We've been following the guidance of public health experts on how we can keep all who are part of our school community, students, staff, families, and visitors, safe in the midst of a growing health crisis. We're now at a point where the balance has shifted and the appropriate path is to close schools. We're taking this step to keep our school communities safe. Effective Monday, March 16th, we will close all Los Angeles Unified Public Schools for 2 weeks while we evaluate the appropriate path forward. While our school facilities will be closed, plans are in place for students to continue to learn during this time. And we will open 40 family resource centers throughout the community we serve to continue to provide care for children if families need it. This is a difficult but necessary decision as we try to slow the spread of the virus. Los Angeles Unified serves a high-needs population, and our schools provide a social safety net for children. The closing of any school has real consequences beyond the loss of instructional time. This isn't an easy decision and not one which we take lightly. Each student will have a plan they will take home with them today, and additional support will be provided to assist them as they transition to learning in a different way, and our teachers as they transition to teaching in a different way. For some students, it will be to continue the lesson plan and instruction they've already been working on with their classroom teacher. For others, it will be engaging with the curriculum lessons which we and PBS SoCal will be providing. And for some, it'll be a combination of the two. While our special education centers will also close, students and families will continue to have access to services from the regional centers they currently rely on. Our family resource centers will be open on Wednesday, March 18th, and will be staffed weekdays from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with trained professionals. Children will be able to have a warm meal, engage with their peers, and pursue their different studies, and they'll be safe. We're developing a family resource guide that we'll provide to all of our families before Monday to help answer any questions they might have.
Contribute, say something.
You want me to say something? Fine. I'll say something. You people. You're not a race. You are a virus. You destroy the world. Everything beautiful you poison. You drag us from our homes. You rape our daughters, murder our sons. You crack our spines and do all you can to break our will. You stab us. Then you put the knife in our hand and tell us it's our fault. And if you don't do it yourself, you stand by, close your eyes, and pretend there's nothing
was the image that
wrong. And then
enabled his followers to remain strong.
God.
As you can see, straight from the male slave dungeon.
Muhammad, back in March, you said it was because the black Muslims were too narrowly sectarian and inhibited, and because Elijah Muhammad had become blindly jealous of you and the personal following you had gathered.
I said the first part, but the last part, I didn't say that Elijah Muhammad himself had become blindly jealous. I mentioned that it was his family and the officials in Chicago. Everything that I said always was designed to protect Mr. Muhammad himself, primarily because the image that he had created was the image that enabled his followers to remain strong in faith and things of that sort, and I didn't want to see any adverse effect or negative result develop in the faith of all of his followers. But actually, despite the fact that I tried to protect the Muslim movement, if you'll notice, they used their newspaper to slander me and to label me as a hypocrite and as a rebel, and Mr. Muhammad himself said that I defected. Well, in reality, I never even left the Muslim movement. They put me out, and they put me out because of what I knew, and what I knew was told to me by Mr. Muhammad's son, Wallace Muhammad himself. They put me out and they put him out.
Well, now, first of all, let's find out what it is that Wallace Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad's son, told you.
Well, number one, if you notice, the stick that I always used in presenting, representing, and defending the Muslim movement was the fact that it had the ability to reform the morals of the so-called Negro community. It eliminated drug addiction, alcoholism, fornication, adultery, loose sex, sexual behavior, which meant that it eliminated bastard babies, illegitimate children. Well, as long as I knew that this was what it represented and it gave me a strong stick, I could represent it and defend it. But we had a law which was that whenever any Muslim became involved in any kind of sexual relationship with someone to whom they weren't married, that person would be brought before the Muslim community, humiliated, and then isolated for from 1 to 5 years. This was our law. Well, in 1954, a teenage sister left Detroit and became one of Mr. Muhammad's personal secretaries. And there in the Chicago office, she became pregnant after being there for a year. And she was brought before the Muslim community and humiliated and isolated. And a year later, another secretary, this time one from Lansing, Michigan, came to Chicago. She also became pregnant. She was brought before the community and humiliated and isolated. And because the other person was never brought forth during this court session, it was concluded by all of Mr. Muhammad's followers that it was a non-Muslim who was the other party. Well, we grew so rapidly until that in 1957 or 58, the secretarial staff was expanded to, I think, 8 teenage sisters. In 1959, 6 of them disappeared. 2 of them reappeared in Philadelphia about 2 or 3 months later, and they were all right. The other 4 reappeared in 1960. All 4 of them had babies. All 4 of them had become involved with someone and become pregnant and had these children. So it was, from what I now know, when the 4 of them got back to Chicago and began to compare notes, they found that the same man had told all of them the same story and had made all of them pregnant. that the same man was the father of all 4 of their children and had also been the father of the children brought forth by the 2 secretaries who preceded them. So this story was kept among these sisters until 1962. 2 of them rebelled against the person who was responsible and began to tell the story all over the city of Chicago. It caused many of the Muslims in the Chicago mosque to leave and go back out in the street. They knew it, and I knew nothing about it until 1963 when Mr. Muhammad's son, who had been in prison, came out, and he had been a minister, and he was very religious and spiritual. And when he began to hear these rumors around Chicago, he went to one of the sisters, and the sister admitted to him that the rumor was true. And it was he who first told me about it. And when he told me about it, I wrote to Mr. Muhammad and told him about it, and he admitted that he had a knowledge of it, and that he'd given me a religious explanation that would fit into prophecy and all of that. So I was quiet. And it wasn't until October of 1963 that it came up again. And when it came up again, I realized that the same person who had made these other sisters pregnant was still busy doing the same thing. He hadn't stopped. 2 of the sisters had 2 children by the same man. And one of those 2 sisters was pregnant still, getting ready to have a 3rd child by the same man. So when it was known among the Chicago officials that I had a knowledge of this, they become very fearful of me. They became very antagonistic toward me, and they had to do something to diminish the authority that I had, for fear that if this became public knowledge, the followers would leave the Muslim movement and follow me. And it was at that time that they used the statement that I made against President Kennedy as a pretext to cut my authority, and some other things happened that finally produced the split, or forced the split. And when I made the split, the only reason that I didn't make this public knowledge was I knew the implications, and I felt that if the Muslims who were in the Nation of Islam knew it, that which enabled them to be so strongly religious and exercise moral discipline would be shattered, and it would cause all of them to go right back and start doing the things that they had been doing previously.
Who is the father of all of these various children whom you have enumerated?
The first one to tell me who the father was Wallace Muhammad, and he told me that the father was Elijah Muhammad himself. One of the sisters, he went to the home of one of the sisters, and when he walked in the door, she says, "I want to let you see something." And she showed him her child. She said, "Here's your brother, and your father is the father of this child." And then I questioned the sisters myself, because I was shook up. And they admitted to me that Elijah Muhammad was the father of their children. And I took it to him. And it was at that time he told me that he was Muhammad, the prophet, and that Muhammad had 9 wives. He also told me that he was David. He was the modern David, and that he was the modern Solomon, and that it was meant for him to fulfill today all of the things that they did back there.
And how many of these illegitimate children did he father with the sisters?
Well, he made 6 sisters pregnant. They all had children. 2 of those 6 had 2 children. One of those 2 is having a child right now. I am told that there is a 7th sister who is supposed to be in Mexico right now, and she's supposed to be having a child by him. For one thing, when you first separate from your wife, it's a physical separation, but it's not psychological. You still have feelings for her, and you protect her. But after the physical separation has taken place for a while, it becomes a psychological separation. It was the same way with me in the Muslim movement. When I first separated, it was a physical separation, but my feeling was still there. And it was only after my trip into the Muslim world and my pilgrimage to Mecca that I really was able to exercise the objective approach to it that enabled me to see that something had to be done to bring this to light. Otherwise, a whole lot of innocent people would be killed needlessly.
Well, these revelations that you are now making about Elijah Muhammad, what effect should they have on his following?
Well, I very much doubt that any of his followers who really are aware of what he has done would continue to follow him. He may try and justify it by saying that he's a Muslim, and that a Muslim has a right to these wives. If this were the case, these sisters should not have been humiliated. These sisters have been looked upon for the past 5 years, or 6 years, or 7 years as being guilty of having committed fornication. They have been debased. They have been degraded. I have heard him himself refer to them as having disgraced him. So if they were his wives, he should have given them a position of respect so that all of his followers would respect him and that they would have the protection of his followers today.
Well, do you feel that you then perhaps now should take over the leadership of the black Muslims?
No, I have no desire to take over the leadership of the black Muslims, and I have never had that desire. But I do have this desire. I have a desire to see the Afro-American in this country get the human rights that are his due. I believe that the Islam religion is the best religion for our people because it creates unity and it gives one dignity and racial confidence and all of these things that are necessary to make a complete human being.
Are you not perhaps afraid of what might happen to you as a result of making these revelations?
Oh yes, I probably am a dead man already. Oh yes, I probably am a dead man already.
What do you mean?
When you understand the makeup of the Muslim movement and the psychology of the Muslim movement, as long as if I myself, by having confidence in the leader of the Muslim movement, if someone came to me and I had no knowledge whatsoever of what had taken place and they told me what I'm saying, I would kill them myself. The only thing that would prevent me from killing someone who made a statement like this, they would have to be able to let me know that it's true. Now, if anyone had come to me other than Mr. Muhammad's son, I never would have believed it, even enough to look into it. But I had been around him so closely, I had seen indications of the reality of it, but my religious sincerity made me block it out of my mind.
Have you received threats on your life?
Oh yes. I first received threats on my life in December. In December. No, not in December, in January. When it first became known that I had come back to New York and told the captain of the Fruit in New York, who was my right-hand man formerly, and also the secretary of the New York Mosque and the minister in Boston. When it became known that I had told them, then an effort was made to shut me up. One brother encouraged to go out to my house and shut me up. And fortunately, it was a brother who was well capable of doing so, but it was a brother who was highly intelligent. He was academically equipped to think for himself. And what he was told to do didn't add up. And fortunately, he was the one who put out a feeler to me to find out what was wrong. And I opened his eyes. And then he opened the eyes of the same crew whose job it is to do this kind of work.
You mean he was going to kill you?
Oh, yes. One of them was, an attempt was made to get one of them to wire my car with an explosive. That one is with me right now. Well, fortunately, while I was among the Muslims, I never lived beyond my means, and I have learned how to live within means. And I still have the clothes that that was provided for me at that time. I'm in the house that was provided for me, although we're in a court battle, they're trying to get it back. And I have made this statement to them concerning the house that they could have it. If they would take me back, that they would permit me to come before the Muslim movement, the rank and file, and explain or defend myself against all of the charges that they've made against me, they could have the house. But they are going contrary to their own laws by standing up in the mosque and indicting me, but never giving me a chance to defend myself. And they say that no one can judge me but Mr. Muhammad. In this case, Mr. Muhammad can't sit as judge because he's involved in the case.
Elijah Muhammad says of the Muslims, we carry no arms, and we do not seek to win victory with arms. We do nothing to others that we would not have done unto us.
The two brothers were sent after me with revolvers by Joseph, the captain of the Fruit in New York. They were armed. When a Muslim is attacked, and you'll find this to be the pattern, when the Muslims were attacked in Monroe, Louisiana, Elijah Muhammad gave no signal to anybody across the nation to come to the defense of their brothers. When our brothers were attacked in Los Angeles, again Elijah Muhammad gave no signal to anybody to come to the defense of those brothers. Never have the Muslims anywhere in the country gotten any kind of instruction from the national office or headquarters on how to defend themselves when they are attacked by outsiders. The only times the Muslims have ever been given any instructions to commit violence is when that violence is directed against a fellow Muslim. His followers are violent against Negroes.
Against Negroes?
Yes, his followers will go out and attack another Negro, like they will attack me, or they will brutalize a fellow Muslim who breaks the law. But you don't find those same followers going out in becoming involved in the Negro struggle in any way whatsoever. Now, the violence that he accuses me of is my tendency to want to participate in the struggle of the Negro at all levels. This is what he calls violence.
One question before we go further with that. Has Wallace Muhammad left the black Muslims?
Wallace Muhammad was put out of the Muslim movement right along with me.
As far as you are concerned, you will morally sectarian.
It's a lot easier to act presidential than to do what I do. Anybody can act presidential. Ladies and gentlemen of the state of Florida, thank you very much for being here. You are tremendous people. And I will leave now because I am boring you to death. Thank you. No, but I said, I used to tell them all the time, the fake news, I'd say, I can be more presidential than any president in history, except for possibly Abe Lincoln with a big hat. I don't know if I can. Abe looked pretty presidential, right? What do you think? He's tough. He's tough. I admit it, Abe Lincoln is tough. But we love Abe Lincoln. We believe that only American citizens should vote in American elections. Which is why the time has come for voter ID, like everything else. Voter ID. You know, if you go out and you want to buy groceries, you need a picture on a card. You need ID. You go out and you want to buy anything, you need ID and you need your picture. In this country, the only time you don't need it, in many cases, is when you want to vote for a president, when you want to vote for a senator, when you want to vote for a governor or a congressman. It's crazy. Biometric entry-exit visa tracking systems. We will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. For years, Congress has required biometric entry-exit visa tracking systems, but it has never been completed. The politicians are all talk, no action, never happens, never happens. Hillary Clinton, all talk. Unfortunately, when there is action, it's always the wrong decision. Do you ever notice? In my administration, we will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system. Approximately half of new illegal immigrants came on temporary visas and then never, ever left. Why should they? Nobody's telling them to leave. Stay as long as you want. We'll take care of you. Beyond violating our laws, visa overstays pose, and they really are a big problem, pose a substantial threat to national security. The 9/11 Commission said that this tracking system should be a high priority and would have assisted law enforcement and intelligence officials in August and September 2001 in conducting a search for two of the 9/11 hijackers that were in the United States on expired visas. And you know what that would have meant. What that could have meant. Wouldn't that have been wonderful, right? What that could have meant. Last year alone, nearly 500,000 individuals overstayed their temporary visas. Removing visa overstays will be a top priority of my administration. If people around the world believe they can just come on a temporary visa and never ever leave, the Obama-Clinton policy, that's what it is, then we have a completely open border and we no longer have a country. We must send a message that visa expiration dates will be strongly enforced. I'm with you, the American people.
The Jews who were brought in Israel, most of them are white. Not most of them, almost all of them are white, including me. I was brought in Israel from a country which is called Bulgaria. It's a European country, and I can tell you that in every European country there are Jews, and there is so-called organization Jewish Agency, which is trying to take those Jews to Israel. If you track this organization, you can find out that this is not an Israeli organization. This is an American organization. Jewish Agency is an American organization which has the exclusive right to decide who is Jewish and who is not on this planet, and who to be taken to Israel and who's not. Now, if you do research, you will find out that in Africa, in Black Africa, they're looking for Jews only in Ethiopia. They bring Jews only from Ethiopia. And I can tell you by knowing a lot of people, Ethiopian Jews here in Israel, that they're treated very badly, very badly. And many of them commit suicide because they cannot take it. They come from some place, Ethiopia, they don't have much there, but they live decent life. And when they come here and try to be humiliated and so on, some of them cannot even take it. Now, what I'm trying to say is that why from each white country this Jewish Agency is trying to bring Jews, and when it's about Black Africa, they're going to Ethiopia, and this is where they stop. The only one place. Now, because of the same thing, they're trying to do the white supremacy here. They try to bring white guys here and to take the supremacy over Arabs, which are the local citizens, and over blacks, which are so far they're only the Ethiopian Jews. Now, what I'm trying also to say is that another question is why America needs Israel. In Israel there is no oil like in other Middle Eastern countries. There's nothing they can be attracted to. But why do they do all these things? Why do they invest money, bring white people and so on, when they build their system of white supremacy, just like in America they build in Israel? Why? And I can tell you why. Because the true Jews, according to the Bible, you can check it in the Bible, you can read Job 30 and some other places, they have never been white. They have been people of color. And they have not stopped in Ethiopia. They were in Ethiopia, Sudan, and they have settled in West Africa. From West Africa, they have been taken as slaves to America. Brothers and sisters, blacks of America, it's you. You are the true Hebrews. You are the true Hebrews from the Bible. America gonna do everything, gonna invest as much money as it has, gonna fight as much wars as they can, gonna invite as much weapons as they can, just to hide this away from you. Gonna take Israel, gonna bring white people here, and to tell you these are the Jews, gonna kill you, gonna kill Arabs, gonna mistreat white people like this guy, just to tell you this lie, that you are nobody and we are the Jews with all the history and so on. It has been deleted, your history. You don't know who you are. Don't forget about it. This is why America has been taking your history away, never to find out that it's all about you. I'm telling you this, please. I don't ask you to come to Israel and to start a revolution. I'm just asking you to start thinking this way, to believe me a little bit, because I'm living in Israel and I'm part of this injustice. I really believe that people like me and you, we can bring the justice back. Thank you.
European Union today, it is because the foundation, the economic foundation of capital, of imperialism, is being stressed by the struggles of the oppressed peoples of the world to take back their resources from this parasite that bleeds Africa.
Contribute, say something.
You want me to say something? Fine. I'll say something. You people. You're not a race. You are a virus. You destroy the world. Everything beautiful, you poison. You drag us from our homes, you rape our daughters, murder our sons. You crack our spines and do all you can to break our will. You stab us. Then you put the knife in our hand and tell us it's our fault. And if you don't do it yourself, you stand by, close your eyes, and pretend there's nothing wrong. And then you pray to your God.
As you can see, straight from the male slave dungeon, where they kept 1,000 of us there. Had us walk on the beach, shackled up as we boarded the ships and went to the Americas, Caribbeans. Here the British had a church just above the 1,000 black men that were enslaved. A church right over their head where they prayed and worshiped their God. While we was here, 1,000 in number, packed in 5 different chambers.
To silence our screams so that you can enjoy the happiness that we built for you with our blood. But it's not your fault. It's the only way you know how to be. And the only thing that will change anything is if another virus comes along and does to you what you do to us. And I hope that happens very soon.
That bleeds Africa, that bleeds the world, that bleeds Afghanistan, that bleeds the people of Yemen who are dying by the thousands even as we have this discussion. This is the basis of a Brexit. It can't stand together anymore because the host is rejecting the parasite. And it's creating crisis throughout Europe and throughout the imperialist world. I think it's necessary, brothers and sisters, to say that there has been a natural trajectory by African people for closer union.
Wow. This evening obviously hasn't gone as I'd hoped. And I think I'm having a full-on panic attack right now, so I'm gonna go to the bathroom and get myself together, and when I come back, I hope you don't see me as the devil.
There are more Africans in prison in the United States than there are people in Djibouti or in Equatorial Guinea. And so we find it very difficult also recognizing that by their own estimates, it would take 228 years for the income of Africans colonized in the United States to equal that of the colonial white population. So it is absolutely necessary for me to stand here today before you expressing total opposition to the United States government terroristic actions against the people of Venezuela, with an attempt to starve the people into opposition to their government. The colonial borders that were created by Europe in 1884 and 85. We have to be able to break out of this, but it's going to take revolution in order to do this, and that will destroy imperialism and the world economy that's responsible for the growing incarceration of the masses of people around the world. Uhuru.